All right, so to refute the points that Kathy made about the Second Amendment rights and the initiative to protect people, the Second Amendment is outdated. The politicians who position army teachers as a solution to school gun violence rest their argument upon the Second Amendment. A century has passed since the Second Amendment was subjected to interpretation by the Supreme Court. Since then, the rulings have shifted from an interpretation concentrating on government-run militias and the collective right to bear arms to a modern emphasis on the rights of the individual. And next, in the words of the American Federation of Teachers, arming teachers would not only make our children's classroom less safe, but also not what educators and students want. Next, from the Director of Government Affairs, from Giffords, Courage to Fight Gun Violence, Robin Lord expresses 82% of teachers polled in March 2018 said they wouldn't carry a gun to school, including 63% of teachers who actually own guns. Since 2014, there have been over 30 publicly reported incidents where a gun was fired or negligently handled by armed adults at schools, including some where a police officer unintentionally discharged the weapon. And we've seen this in the past couple of months. Actually, a Georgia social studies instructor who was teaching at the time fired his gun after barricading himself in a classroom in a time of personal stress, and a Virginia school resource officer accidentally fired his gun in his office. So in this situation, the person that you think that would protect you actually turned to become the shooter, which causes more stress for the students and places them in an environment where it feels hostile. And going back to refuting about how student teachers need to be trained and how they have to have a pass rate of above 90%, even highly trained individuals, no matter if they're a teacher or a professional in law enforcement, they still have trouble shooting the target or shooting the person that is becoming a threat. And in fact, just days after President Trump proposed arming teachers with guns as a solution for protecting classrooms, a California teacher, reserve police officer teaching a class about gun safety, accidentally fired a gun in a classroom, resulting in another student injury. And students respect teachers differently than law enforcement, so you relate differently to a teacher than you do to a police officer, and you should keep this relationship different. The training required to make armed teachers anything more than a liability would be onerous. Teachers already work long hours for relatively little pay, and many school districts have dismissed the idea as simply impractical. Going back, properly shooting a handgun is extremely hard and difficult. Even under the most ideal conditions, shooting with the handgun is extremely hard, according to Joshua Grubbs. And then law enforcement officers undergo extensive firearm training in order to respond to crisis scenarios. Teachers don't. More guns in an active shooter situation makes it more difficult for police officers to identify the shooter and respond, making the situation more dangerous. And lastly, educators become a greater liability when carrying a weapon. Avery Gardner, co-president of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, expresses, "Think about the burden on schools to make sure the teachers are safe to carry guns. Who's doing that checking and monitoring and retraining?" So last, we know what does work to keep kids and schools safe. Gun safety laws, like background checks and extreme risk protection orders, that keeps gun out of the hands of dangerous people. We can't let this misguided proposal put our kids' lives at risk.